when we're really clear what's the most important thing, it operates as a kind of organizing principle, energetically even. So if we're organized around the most important thing being founded in ego and what the ego wants, then we're going to continue to have our sense of self be organized around ego. If we can tap into what's the most important thing that we're orienting to, that is prior to the ego or beyond the ego, once we get a sense of that, by going deeper and deeper into the question, like we might sense what we want or what's important, but then when we take it out of it being self-serving, what is it that we want for the whole, or for not only ourselves but the whole of life? And that's when you hear people beginning to assert what it is that really interests them. You know, it might be peace, it might be harmony, it might be truth. These kind of what we might think of as divine principles. I know for myself, when I was really asking this question, what is the most important thing, when I first came upon Adya's teachings, probably about almost 3 decades ago now, I had a sense that I was feeling my way to what would resonate as an answer to this question. And so it wasn't so much my mind, although my mind would tell me things like, I'm really interested in a deeper sense of peace. But for me, I could feel that it was something else, that I wouldn't quite put the word peace on what I was sensing for. And so how I would word it in my own experience, and I only share my own experience because I want you to get the feel of how you might navigate this question if you haven't already, or to see how what I say might resonate in your experience with what you've already found as a response. Let me share. So I think that as I was asking this question, I had like two sides of a coin emerging in response to this question. On one side, I was feeling for what's truly important and valuable, and that felt life-affirming and good and deeply satisfying. But also on the other side of the coin, I was simultaneously feeling like, what isn't working? What is it that I have not been satisfied with orienting around? And without being too analytical in my mind, I was just feeling for it and holding the question in my being as I went about the business of living. So it wasn't like I continued to I asked the question of myself by rote. It was more like something that was just cooking in my being. That's what like a deep contemplation is. Something that you hold in your being, of what's deeply important, what is calling to me in a most fundamental way. And as I was asking that question, what I recognized was what really wasn't working for me. And what I noticed was, when I had an idea of how I wanted something to go, anything, an event or a happening, an occurrence, a person, a way, a conversation, anything. When I had a definite wanting it a certain way, I could feel this sense of wanting to control in my body as a kind of tightness, wanted to control the outcome of a certain thing. I could feel that I was asserting my will on the situation in a way where it felt like it was being informed by a sense of something, like an argument with the moment or with the relating. Like, I don't want it to go that way, I want it to go this way. And I could feel that I had this tug of war inside, this kind of tension point of not being able to just sort of rest into how things were unfolding and letting them reveal to me in a way that I could respond to, but more I kept wanting to steer and drive my experience more often than I felt was necessary and was actually fundamentally satisfying. So I thought, well, this isn't really satisfying. It just leaves me with a sense of being in an argument with the other person I'm talking to, or the outcome that I'm trying to, push away, or that kind of thing. So I was really contemplating this notion of the statement, not my will, but thy will. And I could really feel that I wasn't committed to that teaching, that pointer, that I really didn't get it. A part of me thought it sounded great, like, oh, to be really surrendered to the will of God, or to the flow of life, or to the Tao. It sounded fantastic. But some part of me was like, nuh-uh, like, no, I don't want that. I want it the way I want it. And I just assumed that I knew what was better or best. And so I had to really ask myself, am I going to come to a place within myself? Am I going to decide? Do I want to offer my life and my incarnation to trying to receive life on life's terms, how it's given, how it's pointing me, what it's offering, what is how it presents in a way that I can align with, versus continually trying to steer it. And it doesn't mean that there can't be a bit of both, but I think in order to truly understand what it is to align with life without agenda, as the first questioner was speaking of, I think it's necessary to really open to that possibility in yourself in a very deep way, to really decide, I don't want to be at argument with life. I want to embrace life as it is, and to have it be in a relationship with it that informs me what's possible versus me dictating the outcomes. And so the more I sat with that, the more I really truly realized, like, I just want to put down the fight. I want to put down the argument. And that is what I intuited would bring a greater sense of peace. Some people are afraid to do that because they assume then that life won't take care of itself as well as their thinking mind would. But I think that's that it takes enough humility to see that, wow, life may actually turn out a lot differently if I'm not setting the terms and outcomes and fighting against life to make sure those happen. So it's a lot of just being willing to experiment and to observe in your own direct experience what is actually more deeply satisfying. And so that was how I went about it. And the more I had a greater faith and trust in resting back and sensing how life was unfolding, and then responding to whatever came forward to me to respond to, was a lot easier than me continually going forward and pushing things along. So one of the basics then in this sharing is that I think that what's deeply important when we ask that question, what is deeply, deeply important, it can often lead us to a greater alignment with the will of God, which you could say is simply whatever's happening. whatever is happening is the will of God, absent the. I mean, it's not that our insistence that it be happen another way isn't to some degree the will of God as well, but if you had to choose, it'd be more the personal will. And so I think when the personal will aligns more with the moment, then you have this coming together of the will of God and the personal will in a way that is more unified, because it's not founded in that sense of separate self-asserting its agendas.